Thanks, Susan, and thanks all for coming. This is a wonderful turnout. This will be some kind of a progress report on some work that we're doing in our lab on the relationship between metaphors in people's minds and the forms of spoken and signed languages. So when we think about metaphors, normally we're thinking about the parade cases of metaphors, like when Shakespeare told us that all the world is a stage, or Wordsworth to fill our paper with the breathings of our heart, right? Or when Orwell blasted advertising as the rattling of a stick inside of a swill bucket. These are obviously metaphors. If you ask somebody, hey, is all of the world really a stage, literally a stage? Of course, they're going to say, no, the world is a planet, a stage is a stage. This is a metaphor, it's not literally true. These metaphors, although they make the headlines, they are the tiny minority of the metaphors that we use in language, and I will argue in cognition. The majority of metaphors are hidden, kind of like this guy here. You might not even notice that they're there. These are very mundane metaphors, like saying, I want to take a long vacation. That's a high price or a close friendship. If you try to convince somebody outside of the cognitive sciences, and actually if you try to convince a lot of cognitive scientists, that these are in fact metaphors where we're using spatial structure to think about abstract stuff like time and value and friendship, people might say, I don't buy it, right? A long vacation, if you do the same test, hey, was your vacation really long? Was it literally long? Yeah, right? Oh, sure, it was long, right? That's how you talk about it. And a possibility here, based on analyses of language per se, is that what I'm referring to here as metaphors are in fact instances of polysemy. That a word like long has multiple senses, multiple meanings. One is extent in space, another is extent in time, then there are more specialized meanings. That this has nothing to do with the alternative, which is that we are creating active mental metaphors. When we think about abstract domains like time, we're activating mental representations of space. The same kinds of mental representations that allow us to perceive and understand and reason about spatial relationships in the physical world. So the question is this just polysemy, or are we also creating active metaphors when we use expressions like a long time, or when we think about entities like time, even when we're not using language? This is an empirical question. It can't be decided. The answer can't be decided on the basis of analyses of language alone. This is a question about how people are thinking, right? If you put two pictures closer together on a computer screen, people think that they're more similar than if the same two pictures were seen farther apart, right? Consistent with the linguistic metaphor that close is similar, and the corresponding mental metaphor that proximity is similarity is proximity in space. If you, germane to today's discussion, if you make people move objects upward while you are prompting them to retrieve autobiographical memories, they're more likely to remember happy thoughts than if you cause them to move objects downward while giving them the same memory prompts, right? Consistent with expressions like I'm feeling up or I'm feeling down, right? That mood is metaphorized in terms of vertical space. It turns out we really conceptualize positive and negative ideas in terms of up and down. So this is the kind of evidence that is accumulated, suggesting that people think in mental metaphors even when they're not using language. So the question we'll ask is, are mental metaphors encoded in the forms of words across different languages? So the test bed that we'll use is this mental metaphor that good is up and bad is down. It's found in linguistic expressions. It's found in people's behavior even when they're not using language. Some of that behavior is gesture. In the first set of experiments that I'll mention, we brought people into the lab. We recruited them in pairs and had them sit down and take turns reading stories, encoding them into memory, and then retelling them to their partner as if they were their own personal experiences, right? So you would read a story about, we'll see one about the trials and tribulations of a woman's basketball team, right? And she will tell this to her nonce friend as if it's her own experiences. People are told that this is an experiment about storytelling. They have no idea that their gestures are of interest. If you debrief them afterwards and say, actually, this was an experiment about spontaneous gestures with your hands, they'll tell you most of the time, gosh, why didn't you tell me? I didn't gesture, right? Well, you can see how people don't gesture right here. So watch as this woman is talking for target ideas like falling, dropping, plummeting. These are spatial words being used metaphorically. But similar ideas, like being ranked number 1 or losing or getting injured, positive and negative ideas that she'll be expressing in language without any space involved. Yet watch her hands.
Okay, so I'm the star on my college basketball team, and we're ranked number 1 right now, but I just got injured. And so I'm worried that our ranking's going to start to fall. If we lose to our arch rival, then we're going to be dropped from the top ranked spot. And if we get on a losing streak because of my injury, then we're going to plummet to the middle of the pack. And if we get another star player on our team who gets injured as well, then we're going to plummet to the bottom of our entire division.
They're scintillating stories. The kids love it. What you see is that she's gesturing very systematically, right? You can these words or clauses containing positive or negative ideas, and this is true whether or not she's using spatial language. To lose. That book on the lose shelf, right? Not good English. So these ideas are spatialized in gesture and by inference in thought, even when they're not spatialized in language. Now, obviously, I picked her because she's a good example. She was doing what we predicted she would do. But there's a danger in doing this. If you want to make inferences about, better make sure that the patterns that we see are not in the researcher's imagination, that we're not just cherry picking the ones that fit the hypothesis. So we collected hundreds of clips like this on various stories. 4 of the stories that we used had upward or downward metaphorical spatialization by virtue of their valence. And then we code every word and every gesture. So we transcribe the speech with the video off and parse the speech into clauses. Then we make silent video clips of each clause that contains some clear target domain content, some positive or negative idea. The clip of that clause, and then we hand that off to another coder who views these silent video clips in randomized order, so you have no idea what the co-occurring speech is, and all you're doing is parsing the gestures into gesture phrases and coding the direction of any stroke that you see, and recording those, and then you correlate the direction of the strokes with the valence of the corresponding clauses, and test them against this a priori prediction that, on average, people should be gesturing up when they're talking about positive stuff more often and down when they're talking about negative stuff more often. Of course we know that we can express spatial ideas and metaphorical spatial ideas in gesture. What about in language? Well, it's not such a far leap from gesture to sign in terms of the expressive capabilities of the hands to diagram spatial relationships. Let's look at the ASL words for bad and for good. So here's bad. All right, let's play that again. This is great. Check that out. Bad is clearly down, right? Metaphor. Here's good. Uh-oh. One more time. Well, that's not an upward that's not an upward. Bad, but none of them has, that I'm aware of, has an upward lexical movement. So, to answer this question, we're going to have to do what we've done for gestures and look statistically at it. On average, this relationship between space and valence holds in obligatory aspects, lexicalized aspects of these words' forms. This is work that's being led by Defu Yap, who is right here. So I'll refer you to Defu for really technical questions. So this project starts from the observation that every word has some valence. Every word can potentially, as lying along this valence continuum, can potentially participate in this systematic mapping between space and valence. Therefore, the mental metaphor good is up could influence the form of any, or in principle, every sign. Now, every is very unlikely. The question is, on average, are signs with more upward lexical motions more positive in meaning than signs, and signs with more downward lexical motions more negative in meaning? How are we going to find out? Well, we're going to construct our sample starting from a corpus of English words, about 1,000 of them, that have been rated for valence, how positive or negative they are, on a 9-point scale, and used in tons of experiments. We are going to search an ASL dictionary for translation equivalents of these English words. And a translation equivalence is determined if the gloss is the same, the gloss in the sign dictionary is the same as the English word, then that's a match. Then we're going to code the direction of the lexical movement in each sign as either upward, downward, or neither, non-vertical movement. And this coding is done by a non-signer who is proficient in gesture coding and blind to the glosses of these signs, blind to their meanings. And then the analysis is just to compare the valence of the ANU translation equivalents as a function of the direction of the lexical movements in this sign to answer the question that we set out. Here are some examples of the words in this corpus. And the question is, what's the relationship between that valence and the direction of the lexical movement during that sign? The answer is that, holy cow, upward signs and non-vertical signs, signs with non-vertical lexical movements or no lexical movements, are intermediate in valence, just as we would predict on the basis of a mental metaphor, good is up and bad is down. Now, that's exciting, but that's one signed language, right? Dufour repeated this analysis in another signed language, French sign language, and found the exact same pattern. Well, those are genetically related signs, so this could be considered a non-fully independent test of this hypothesis. Let's find a sign language that is genetically unrelated or with very little relationship. How about British Sign Language? Well, there we find the same relationship. As predicted, if this implicit mental metaphor good is up is finding its way into the obligatory aspects of the forms of signed words. Okay, so that's neat. We've gone from gesture to sign, but of course sign is capable of expressing spatial relationships. So here's a simplified schema of the 4 tones in Mandarin. As you note, one of them is strongly rising, one of them is strongly falling. And so to code the change in pitch for monosyllabic words, it's very easy. Win and hatred are both upward, love and afraid are both downward. So Dufour translated almost all of the 1,000 or so words from the ANU corpus in English into Mandarin. They almost all matched, and determined the sum of the tonal movement for each. Whatever the sum is, this word gets coded as a net downward moving word, or a net upward moving word, or a net level word. So we see the same relationship between valence and space in a dimension of musical pitch. At least that's true for a tone language like Mandarin. Is that the end of the road? Is this as far as we can go? Or could this the rest of the languages in the world also perhaps via pitch? Well, Tom Keisels, who is here without his stovepipe, is working to find out, and this is work in progress. But here's what we're seeing so far. Here's the idea. Different vowels have different characteristic F0s, different characteristic fundamental frequencies, which linguists have measured and published normative data for. The question is, on average, are words with higher F0 vowels in their stressed syllables more positive in meaning, and words with lower F0 vowels more negative in meaning? Well, there is a continuum of average F0 in these normative measurements across vowels. It's not just up, down, or none of the above. So then the question is, how pervasive is this metaphoric iconicity? Well, mental metaphors provide previously unexplored opportunities for iconicity in language. The dogma is that spoken language especially has very little capacity for iconicity. Actually, if you think about metaphoric iconicity, where the resemblance is between some physical form and the source domain of a metaphor, like space, like motion, then maybe there are lots and lots of opportunities. Maybe spoken language has tremendous capacity for iconicity. We have tested so far effects of exactly one mental metaphor, and we found them everywhere we looked. There are hundreds of other mental metaphors that we use all the time. We can't help using them in language and in thought. What other metaphoric form-meaning correspondences might be constraining variation in our lexicon? I will stop there and thank our consultants and collaborators and the people who are doing this work and our funders, and I thank you all for your attention.